what you were doing and prepared to be stunned. Are you ready? With tax day less than 90 minutes away, we actually found an issue that a Republican and a Democrat agree on. Well, maybe that should be a Fox News alert. Earlier, Republican Senator Gregg and Democratic Senator Wyden went on the record about their bipartisan tax reform proposal. This is a sort of unusual concept, bipartisanship. Is it not?
A new and original thought, but we sort of like it. We're making great progress, and we're doing what we think is some really good things in the area of tax policy, especially.
Senator, what it does is people are used to the fights between Democrats and Republicans. They come back, and after a long day, they turn on the TV, they see that. What Senator Gregg and I are saying is that in the area of tax policy, instead of the Democrats and Republicans going after each other, let's go after these special interest groups that have hijacked the tax code and are keeping rates up.
All right, there seem to me to be two issues. One is your proposal. That's the first thing. The second thing is how you get the United States Senate or anyone to consider it. Let me ask you, do you know anybody in the United States Senate, Senator Gregg, poses to you first, who does not think our tax code needs some work?
No, that's a universally accepted fact, because all you got to do is look at it. I mean, it's this big, and it's extremely complicated, and we waste hundreds of millions of man-hours a year trying to comply with it. It makes no sense at all.
So, do you know anyone who...
In a place with 100 votes, Greta, you'd probably get 103 votes for tax simplicity, with people trying to stuff a second vote in.
All right, so this should be an easy task for you to at least get it considered. Senator Wyden, is there any problem with you getting your tax bill considered?
Well, first of all, this is already building on a model we've done before. Back in 1986, you had Ronald Reagan teaming up with Bill Bradley and Bob Packwood, a whole host of Democrats and Republicans. It's a straightforward proposition. Go in there, clean out the junk, clean out the special interest breaks to hold down rates and keep progressivity. The big challenge is every one of those tax breaks has a big lobby behind it. They're all going to go to the Finance Committee, on which I serve. They're going to say, you take away our tax break and Western civilization is going to end.
All right, well, it's your party that's in the majority. Will your party take this up?
The big challenge is getting the leadership in both parties to be willing to take on the interest groups. I think we've got a very good chance, for example, with the Deficit Commission this summer. Senator Gregg is a member of it. I'm on the Budget Committee. We've got a chance, when they look at all the options this summer, given the fact that right now the spending far exceeds the revenue, Senator Gregg and I can say to the Deficit Commission this summer, there aren't very many appealing alternatives out there. This is one that you ought to like.
All right,
well, I think there are two things that are going to give this lift. Number one, it makes sense. This is essentially taking the tax laws, making them simpler, making them fairer, and also making them much more pro-growth, so that we're more competitive in the world. So the companies will expand here rather than go someplace like Ireland where they get a tax break. And so the companies overseas will come here and create jobs. So this is a jobs bill. That's the first thing.
But it's also simple, because the corporate thing. But I mean, for most Americans, and tax day is tomorrow. You know, the tax code is so complicated. You know, this makes it simple. Your proposal, whether it's good or not, it's simple.
Vast majority of Americans will fill their taxes out on one page, and for people with incomes under $200,000, their taxes will probably go down under this bill. We take the 6 brackets, we make 3 brackets. We give a huge incentive for corporations to expand in this country by reducing the top rate from 35% to 24%. And in the process, we basically create a fairer tax law so that people know that just because you got a good accountant, you're not going to be able to game the system, even though you may have the same income as your neighbor.
You can explain it simply. The middle-class person gets to triple their standard deductions. That means if you're making $50,000, $60,000, in effect, half your income is off limits. If you're running a small business, you want to buy a new piece of equipment, we let you write it off in the first year. So when you're talking to middle-class people about getting a substantial middle-class tax cut, and you're talking to small business folks trying to expand, competing in a tough global marketplace, we've got benefits for them immediately.
Well, this is the type of bill that we're almost craving as American people for a couple of reasons. One is the bipartisanship. To see a Democratic U.S. Senator, a Republican U.S. Senator working together on this, we don't in the public see much of that lately. That's the first thing. To simplify that humongous code, you know, we certainly love that. Everybody thinks the tax code is a mess, and so it's like, you know, we're craving some change or some fix.
Absolutely we are. And the American people get this. I mean, it's not the American people you have to sell on this concept. And corporate America gets it too.
As Senator Wyden says,
you've got to sell this bubble that surrounds Washington. You know, as Senator Wyden pointed out, Yeah, sure it should. And there's every item in the tax law has a group that defends it. And what we're doing is we're taking a lot of those items out and we're replacing it with a flatter, fairer tax, an equally progressive system. And we're also creating huge incentives for capital formation, which is critical to creating jobs. So, but there are interests that are going to be losers.
But this, Senator Wyden, should almost be like war, a decision that you make that you set politics aside, you set special interests aside. You make decisions for the American people, both for the simplicity and for growth in the economy. If this is a good decision, it ought to be considered by the U.S. Senate, and quickly.
Greta, you're being logical, and heaven forbid that logic should break out over all this. Here's what the special interest groups are going to try to say to the American people in response to Senator Gregg and I. They're going to go and use advertising and blogs and all of the new media to say, look, Senator Gregg and Senator Wyden are talking about taking away something you like. It might be small, but it's something that you like. And you know, those guys never will cut your rates across the board. So they're going to frighten people, tell them that they're going to be giving up something and they really won't get the rate cuts. What Senator Gregg and I are prepared to say is that, like in 1986, when a Republican president got together with a bunch of Democrats, we're prepared to go the distance for, just as you say, this economic challenge. This is the economic equivalent of war right now.